and for everybody it's different.
They're very blatant on their website that here's a prototype of something we eventually hope to charge you for.
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah, I was just going to ask. You might have already answered it, but how did you go from like showing your friends your game to then getting a deal? Like, was that quite a big?
Yeah. So I approached that at the very beginning of the talk. Maybe you weren't here. Maybe I didn't really do it strongly enough, but it bears repeating, right? If you so there's this whole swarm of like normal everyday things that happen, like business concerns and advice that people give you, like here's how you make a game that really appeals to people, and like here's how you get a deal, or here's how you negotiate the terms in your contract and all that. And all of that stuff only applies to like 95% of games, right? But you don't want to be in that 95%. You want to be in the top 5% that are above those rules, right? You want to be the person where your game is so awesome that like the publisher calls you without you ever having pitched it to them, right? That's what you're aiming for. And if your game is that compelling, then you'll get a deal because you're just differentiated from everybody else. So that sounds like kind of a snide answer, but I fully believe that. Like that is what everybody in this room should be aiming for, and it is possible.
Do you reckon giving the player the chance to be ethical or unethical, moral or immoral, create or destroy, constitutes being unethical?
Okay. So in case you couldn't hear that, so there's a trend of certain games like, I don't know, Jedi Knight and Black and White and things where you can be good or be evil, or Grand Theft Auto where you can go beat up people or you can try to do missions. Is that unethical to give the player the freedom to explore those things and be evil and whatever? I don't think so, but it's not something that I've thought very deeply about because that's not the kind of game that I've made. So I might go make a game like that. I think if I made it, it would be pretty different from any of those games that I made. But at the same time, I'm saying this not having done it and not having come face to face with that. And maybe if I did, I would decide, like, ooh, I really don't want to make this game. Maybe. I don't know. I do think, again, so a game like Grand Theft Auto, 3 or 4, is inherently cynical, like I was saying, right? They're not trying to present, like, here's what it really feels like to be a human who kind of lives as this rough guy on the streets and goes around and like rips off cars and beats up hookers. It's trying to present to you, hey, it's cool to be like this gangsta who runs around and like rips off cars and beats up hookers. And it's a very different thing, right? I think if somebody in this room made authentic Grand Theft Auto, like, dude, you would so have a deal, it would be amazing, right? But for some reason, nobody does that. Nobody wants to come at these games from this place of authenticity because we have these years or maybe even decades of cynicism and distance. And that's built into our tradition, and we have to work hard to overcome that, I think, way in the back.
There was one point that you skipped over in your talk.
Oh, yeah.
Would you mind touching on it at all?
Yeah, so one of the things that I care about, and I could talk about this one for like 3 hours. I have some hobbies besides games, martial arts and certain kinds of dancing. And so I think a lot about mind-body integration and what it means to intend to do something and what the process is between that intent and the actions that your body performs and its effect on the environment and then the environment's effect on you, right? And how that travels back into your perceptions, right? And so there's this field of that called semantics, and it's actually, that word stands for a ton. There's a lot of different things that are all called semantics. I find it to be a really interesting subject. That game that I showed with the dots moving around and stuff was an early exercise in that. It was like, what happens when we shift the player's intention back and forth, and how does that feel? And that felt really cool. Another thing that wasn't quite in that game, but that I find fascinating in conjunction with that, is the idea of proxied embodiment, which is that when you get used to using a tool, like say you drive a car, you call them cars in Australia? Yes, I honestly don't know. Like, say you drive a car all the time, right, and you're used to it. You don't have to think about the fact that you're in this car and you're controlling the car, right? Like the car kind of becomes an extension of your body, and you're moving this bulkier thing around, right? That's a proxy for your body. And according to semantics, right, you have some process by which you interoperate with that proxy. And the thing that fascinates me about this is that your avatar in the game world is also a proxy for your body, but it's an imaginary one, and you can control, as the game designer, the rules about that. So I think that the game design field is ripe for some semantics exploration that nobody has ever even thought about. Like, what does it mean to have this chain of intention and response that goes through a computer into it and comes back out? Yeah. Yeah.
I read that you started developing games in '96.
Yes.
So you've developed a few. My question is, when do you stop developing a game? Because I've been working on a game for a few years, and there's so much to do. So is that when you find that the game isn't popular enough, or you don't get the attention of publishers?
So is it, what kind of game is it? Can you, just like what genre or?
An audio, video, adventure game?
Adventure game?
Online, yes.
So you mean like a role-playing game or like a?
3D objects, all the graphics, the GUI development,
Yeah,
videos, and the work is endless. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering, you've developed a few games, and where do you stop? Because I don't see an end to what I'm doing. There's constantly work.
Yeah, that's a hard question. Where do you stop? Where do you give up on a game, essentially, and go to the next idea? My preference was very early, like after 1 or 2 weeks, right? Obviously, it's too late for that. But again, that's almost a product question, right? And I'm trying to stay away from product questions. I think like, hey, if you totally believe in this game and you think it's a really great thing, put it on the internet for like $10 and let people buy it. And maybe not that many people buy it and you don't make any money and that sucks. But then you've got some closure and can move on to the next thing, right? Or there's some places like Steam, the guys at Valve Software put up games for download. They're not necessarily that good at getting indie game customers, but you could try that. Like when I started in '96, you had to go through a traditional publisher route. You couldn't really sell things on the internet. Now it's kind of viable, and people make money doing it. So I would say when you feel the game is good enough that it holds interest for your audience, whatever that means, just pull the cord on it.
You seem to come from the visual art background.
I actually don't. I have no art education at all. It's just kind of what I'm interested in.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, when you do painting or any artwork, you sort of have to make a decision, okay, that's it, and the work is over. There's new trends where you don't necessarily do artwork for the sake of making a material object. So in the virtual world or the digital creations, then there's not necessarily an end to our artwork.
Absolutely. That's a hard kind of game to be working on, right? You picked a difficult one. Back in the middle.
How do you go about choosing the artists you did for Braid, and how do they affect your design and the development process?
Yeah, I could give like a 4-hour talk on that. So I looked for a long time trying to find artists. I really cared a lot about this game, right? The art had to be good, and it had to work with the game, and man, it's really hard to find that. Like I had a bunch of money saved up, and I was willing to pay people like contract art rates, and I still wasn't able to get 2D art of a reasonable quality. And I think the main reason is the whole industry has moved on to like 3D. So 2D skills aren't really out there anymore, or people who have 2D skills are working full time and they don't want to contract. But I did stuff like I posted on, maybe Craigslist isn't big here, but it's this thing in the States where you can post ads. And I posted on message boards like indiegamer.com saying, hey, I'm looking for artists. And people would email me and I would say, here's a scene from the game. It's all built out of blocks and programmer art. Spend 1 day or 2 days and I'll pay you to just do a concept of this as a forest scene, and give me back this screenshot of showing me how you would make this game look. And by the way, here's a few paragraphs describing the mood and things that I'm going for. And I did that like with 30 different artists or something. And I even went more forward than that with a few of them. Like I would start working with an artist for a few weeks or a month, paying them to work on the game before deciding like they really don't get it. They don't get this game and their art isn't right. And eventually, someone just happened to refer to me, a really good world artist and character artist, and it worked. But I got lucky. Like, I could have just had to settle for something. In fact, I at one point went to an art house and spent a great deal of money contracting them to like churn out the art in a month because I just wanted to be done with the game, and like it really sucked. It was like terrible, and I was like, no, this can't be the game. So very early on in the beginner part, I was encouraging people to be able to go forward and do what they can by themselves. And I do encourage that to the greatest extent possible. I didn't have the visual art skills to do the art to this game and feel good about it, which is why I wanted to go to somebody else. But man, it was a big problem. And if you can make a whole game yourself, it's really preferable because you don't have that problem. You know, I would be a lot richer right now if I had art skills. That was a long answer, sorry. But so I'm going to need someone to cut me off when there's too many questions.
Yeah, we might do a wrap up now, but you can see Jonathan in a couple of panels' time here in the Independence Day panel. So again, if everyone could just thank Jonathan for